When he first stepped into the bright CNN studio, he felt his heart race. The lights were blinding, the air cold from the machines, and the cameras stood like giants. He looked around and wondered quietly, how did a boy from a small town in the Philippines end up here? But before the thrill could settle in, something unexpected happened. The moment he spoke, a few people laughed, not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. His accent stood out. It wasn't the smooth American tone everyone was used to hearing from CNN anchors. It carried the rhythm of the Philippines, the gentle rise and fall that made his English sound different, warm, musical, but unfamiliar to many ears. Some smirked, some whispered, and soon, the laughter reached the internet. Tweets appeared. Who's this guy on CNN? His accent is weird. Can't even pronounce properly. They didn't know him, but they laughed anyway. At first, he wanted to hide. He wanted to speak less, to make fewer mistakes, to not draw attention. But then, he remembered his mother's voice from long ago. He could still see her, wiping sweat from her forehead after a long day selling food by the street, saying, "Anak, people will laugh when they don't understand. But don't stop speaking. Someone out there needs to hear you." Those words became his anchor. From that day, he decided not to run from the laughter, but to rise above it. Every morning, he came in early. He practiced his lines, recorded himself, and listened for hours. He didn't try to erase his accent. Instead, he worked to make his message clear, confident, and real. If people were going to notice his voice, he wanted them to notice the heart behind it. And slowly, things began to change. His reports carried sincerity. When he talked about storms, people felt the pain of those who lost everything. When he spoke of hope, they heard it in his tone. He didn't just read the news, he lived it. Then one day, everything shifted. A woman from Texas posted online, "That Filipino anchor on CNN, don't care about his accent. He speaks with more compassion than anyone else." The comment went viral. People began to look at him differently. The same voice they once laughed at now felt comforting, trustworthy, human. For the first time, he saw messages filled with love instead of mockery. "You make me feel calm. You're my favorite anchor. You speak from the heart." He couldn't believe it. When his producer told him his segment had become one of the most watched, he thought it was a mistake. But the data was real. People weren't tuning in just for headlines anymore. They were tuning in for him, his story, his sincerity, his soul. But even success brought pressure. Every word he said now mattered more. Every pause was analyzed. There were nights he lay awake, wondering if he could keep up, if he could live up to the expectations of millions. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered where he came from. The dusty roads, the radio by candlelight, his father saying, "One day, people will listen to you." As his fame grew, CNN sent him to cover major global stories. Natural disasters, world summits, humanitarian crises. He was there, always bringing warmth into cold headlines. Viewers said his voice carried something they couldn't describe. It was as if he didn't just report the story, he cared. When he talked about victims, his eyes softened. When he spoke about hope, he smiled like someone who'd lived through storms and still believed in sunlight. Then came the story that changed everything. CNN sent him back to the Philippines after a devastating typhoon. The country he left years ago was in pain, and he stood there, not as a foreign correspondent, but as a son returning home. As cameras rolled, he fought back tears while reporting the damage. He didn't hide his emotion, he let it show. And that authenticity touched millions. Viewers across the world saw not just a journalist, but a human being. The clip went viral, gathering millions of views within days. People wrote, "He's not just reporting, he's feeling." Then came the story that changed everything. CNN sent him back to the Philippines after a devastating typhoon. The country he left years ago was in pain, and he stood there, not as a foreign correspondent, but as a son returning home. As cameras rolled, he fought back tears while reporting the damage. He didn't hide his emotion, he let it show. And that authenticity touched millions. Viewers across the world saw not just a journalist, but a human being. The clip went viral, gathering millions of views within days. People wrote, He's not just reporting, he's feeling. From that moment, laughter turned into applause. The same world that once mocked him now celebrated him. CNN gave him a prime slot. Colleagues who once doubted him now asked for advice. And the little boy who once dreamed by candlelight was now reading news to millions, his Filipino accent still proud, still strong. But he never forgot what it felt like to be laughed at. He used his platform to help others who felt the same. He started mentoring young journalists from underrepresented backgrounds, saying, "Don't change your voice to fit in. Use it to stand out." He even launched a foundation back home to help poor students study communication and media. He wanted them to know that success didn't require losing your roots. During one interview, a reporter asked, "How does it feel to be CNN's most loved anchor?" He smiled gently and said, "It feels like forgiveness. Because once, the world laughed. Now they listen." That single sentence exploded online. It became a quote shared by millions. People created edits, added music, and turned it into inspiration videos.
He had become a global symbol of hope, proof that humility, perseverance, and authenticity could win hearts far louder than criticism ever could. Still, he stayed grounded. Every visit back home, he'd stop by the same street corner where his mother once sold food. He'd talk to people, shake hands, laugh, and sometimes quietly hand envelopes to families in need. Fame never blinded him. It only made him more grateful. But his journey hadn't been smooth. Behind every smile on TV were days of doubt, rejection, and loneliness. There were moments when he thought of quitting, when the pressure became too much, when the laughter echoed too loud. Yet, something deeper always pushed him forward, the belief that his purpose was bigger than his pain. One night, while preparing for a late broadcast, he received an email from a young Filipino student abroad. It said, "Sir, I was ashamed of my accent until I heard yours. You made me proud of who I am." He read it twice, then wiped a tear. That was when he finally understood his success wasn't just his own. It was shared by every Filipino who had ever felt small, every dreamer who had ever been told they didn't belong. He often said, "You can polish your skills, but never polish away your identity." That message resonated far beyond newsrooms. It reached classrooms, offices, and hearts across continents. His story wasn't just about television, it was about transformation, how pain can be turned into purpose, and how laughter can become the loudest applause. Years later, during an international media event, a young journalist approached him nervously and said, "Sir, people laugh at me for my accent." He smiled, patted the young man's shoulder, and said, "Good. That means they're listening. Now show them why they should never stop." Everywhere he went, people greeted him not just as a journalist, but as an inspiration. He had become proof that dreams don't belong to a language, and respect isn't earned by sounding perfect, it's earned by being real.
Through all his achievements, he never lost his humility. He continued to help disaster victims, donate anonymously, and visit local schools. And whenever he spoke to students, he always ended his talk with the same words: "They may laugh at your voice, your dream, or your story, but remember, sometimes the world laughs before it listens. So keep speaking." That line became his legacy. It echoed across interviews, documentaries, and speeches. People began to call him the anchor who changed what success sounds like. Years passed. Awards came and went. Yet every time he walked into the studio and saw the red CNN logo glowing, he still whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. For his family, for the journey, for every person who turned mockery into motivation. And even though his story reached millions, he still lived by a simple truth. Being loved by the world means nothing if you forget the ones who first believed in you. Today, his story continues to inspire countless dreamers, not just Filipinos, but anyone who has ever been underestimated. It reminds the world that no matter where you come from, your voice has power. You don't have to sound like anyone else to make a difference. You just have to sound like you. So if you've ever been laughed at, judged, or told that your dream is too big, remember him. Remember how a Filipino voice once shook the walls of CNN, not by shouting louder, but by speaking from the heart. Your accent, your culture, your story. They are not weaknesses. They are your signature. Let the world laugh if it wants to. One day, they'll be clapping instead. Because the truth is simple, laughter fades, but authenticity lasts forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring true life stories, and share this with someone who needs hope today. Together, let's spread more light, more courage, and more faith around the world. Thank you for watching, and remember, your voice matters. Always.